This is Bold TV. Beautiful ladies and gents out there, we are here once again in your space to educate you and inform you on issues regarding disability and, specifically women living with disabilities. This is Bold TV and it is powered by Bold Hearts Initiative. It comes to you every Saturday by 10:30 a.m. We are in your space online. You can, watch our videos. We have our videos on our YouTube channel, Bold TV. We have videos on our Facebook page, Bold Hearts Initiative. So you can go watch current and past episodes of our programs and just, stay in touch, see what we are up to. So today we have come to dissect another interesting topic. Today we'll be talking about the impact of adverse childhood experiences. The impact of adverse childhood experiences. And myself and my co-host are here. Two of my co-hosts are here. And today we have a special guest in the room who will be, she's a sociologist. She will introduce herself, psychologist, and she's, someone who is a specialist in the mental health space. So she will be able to help us do justice to this topic so that we can, have more knowledge. Many people are not usually aware of the impact of certain things that we go through, how they can, change our lives, how they influence what we do going forward. So today we are here to help you see things from a different perspective and to help us, move forward and see how we can get help where we need it. So, but before we begin, I'd like to, give room for those of us here to introduce ourselves. So I will start with the co-host, Osaki. Please go ahead.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, ladies. I'm so glad to be here. I remain Osaki Teresa George, reside in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, work with Fair Care Foundation, member of Bold Heart Initiative, a disability rights advocate, polio warrior. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome, Osaki. Reki, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, lovely morning. My name is Freki Andrew Essien. I'm based in Port Harcourt in Rivers State. I identify as a woman with disability because I use a wheelchair from spinal cord injury. I'm also the executive director of Fair Care Foundation, member of Bold Hearts Initiative, and a public health professional. Ta-da.
All right, welcome. And she's also our IT specialist. It's good to have you. All right, so now I'm going to move on to our special guest. I will allow her to introduce herself. She's a woman without a disability, but she's here as an expert in this topic. So, Titi, you'll tell us your name, what you do, and where you are based.
Okay, hi everyone, good morning, and wherever you're watching us from, good afternoon, good evening. So, like Afyon said, my name is Titi Tadin. And I laughed when she introduced me because she first said she's a sociologist. I said she's a psychologist. And I laughed because I'm in between. In actual fact, I'm a trained clinical psychologist. I don't practice, but I practice as a social worker. I work as a medical social worker. I work at a teaching hospital in Lagos, Nigeria. And so I am here not as a person living with disability, but having worked as a professional in that space. And like I always tell people with disabilities, you guys are the experts because you're living the life. You're the ones that can tell the stories. We can only tell it from a medical perspective. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. You're welcome. All right. And before we go on, I would like to introduce myself. I'm your host for today. My name is Afia Ometum. I'm based in Uyo, medical lab scientist. I use a wheelchair from spinal cord injury, and I'm a member of the Bold Hearts Initiative. So now let's dive straight into our topic for today, impact of adverse childhood experiences. But before we begin, I'll ask the questions. This is the way we are going to do it. My co-host will, ask the questions. So the answers will be coming from our experts, Titi. So I'll go first. Titi, what are adverse childhood experiences? Let's just lay that foundation so that people out there know what we are talking about.
Okay. Adverse childhood experiences are potentially traumatic occurrences that happen in a child's life. And that is, that's the simplest definition. It can happen from any time when the child is born all the way to 18, 19, which we say technically is adulthood. But the reality is a lot of damage can be done in the early years because people assume that children forget. Children don't have memories, and so if anything happens to them before they're 2 or before they're 5, before they're 10, they won't remember. The assumption is you won't remember certain things until you're 12, 13. But in actual fact, a lot of some of these things that happen to us as kids, we may not remember, but we remember the trauma. You understand? We may not know what caused the trauma, what led to it, but remember how we felt. How it made us feel as we're going through that period, and that we carry with us into adulthood.
Okay, in addition to that, can you just give us examples of some of these adverse experiences?
So, one of the biggest things obviously is, one of the biggest things globally and with us in Nigeria that we're getting to see more is issue of sexual abuse. We're seeing it more and more, and we're seeing it with younger children, babies 9 months, 6 months, with people abusing children. That's one. But you see things like death in the family, and a death in the family of the caregiver of that child. It might be a parent or a sibling, especially if the sibling is maybe they were very close and you could recall, or maybe the sibling had been ill for a period of time. It could even be a sudden death, shock of, just 1 minute the person is here and the next person is no longer there. Nobody talks about that vacuum that has been created by the person's death. It could be parental neglect. It could be parental substance abuse that causes neglect and causes some level of trauma in the child. It could be ill health, childhood ill health, and which wasn't properly managed or something and left, or even if it was managed properly, if you were ill. And I can tell from, I'm sure you have experiences from childhood where you were in hospital or hospitalized, or, and you were being treated for certain things. And some of it, the trauma lives with us as adults. And that's why as adults, you see some adults are afraid of going to a hospital. The smell of the hospital makes them nauseous, that kind of thing. It takes us back to a time where we were terrified as young children.
Okay. All right. Wow, that is amazing. Freki, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So thanks for sharing, and explain to us what child trauma is and what some examples are. Before I ask the question that I have here, and in the context of our conversation, people associate losing or having acquired disability as a loss. For different people, it's different things. So would you term disability acquired by a child as a part of childhood trauma?
Yes, it can be titled as a childhood trauma, especially if it happens at the point in which the child is aware of the before and after. When the child has clear memory of the before and after. If the child is still maybe at the age of 1 when it happened and doesn't have that clear memory, or the child hasn't had the ability to do certain things like walk, run, do things independently, the child need not remember that they were able to do things independently. But with this situation where the child is a bit older, has the ability to recall, then there is a level of trauma, and also depending on what even caused the disability. So if there was a traffic accident, road traffic accident, major accident, maybe family members were lost in the accident, and the child wakes up and all they can remember is we ran into a truck or we ran into something, and they wake up in the hospital and I have some mobility issues, then that may cause trauma. If it's we've had situations where like I said, maybe I know a child that was shot by armed robbers when the armed robbers came to their house, and because of that she acquired a certain level of disability. I mean, that trauma would be beyond the trauma of the fact that she has a level of disability, even just the PTSD from the experience. So the post-traumatic stress from the experience of going through the armed robbery itself is something.
Okay. So, Afyon had asked in her question, some of the examples, and you said that childhood trauma, sometimes even if the child does not remember some of the responses or the reaction. So leading up to that, conversation, I would like to ask how one can know if they've been exposed to adverse experiences as a child. What will be some things that as an adult to begin to see that would refer or, say, or that maybe you have been exposed to some form of trauma as a child?
Okay. All right. So studies show that children that have had adverse trauma in childhood and as they get older may start exhibiting some certain behaviors. And some of the behaviors could include something like precocious sexuality. If it's a child that might have been abused, no recollection, just finds that the person is hypersexualized, or the person has this fear of relationships, intimate relationships, can't explain why, doesn't understand it, but just has a fear of that kind of thing. It may be the person will start acting out in situations where the person starts abusing substances. There's a high link with alcohol, a high link with the use of other substances to sort of cope with whatever they're going through. You also have situations where the person starts exhibiting high-risk behavior, which is linked to the sexuality. And that's why you find out that people that have experienced some childhood traumas may tend to have run into police issues, legal issues, may have STIs, may develop some problems along the line because they're exposing themselves to chronic behavior like that. And then they may have some thoughts, suicidal thoughts. They don't know why they're feeling suicidal. They don't, they're going through certain things. They're not understanding the way they what's going on emotionally within themselves. So there are a lot of things that will be going on within that individual, that the individual, he or she, because it happens to men as well, that they can't explain. But there's a lot of deep-seated anger, resentment, certain things like that. And then you find out the person is acting out and they don't know why they're acting out. They will drop out of school. They might not, the person might have been doing very well and all of a sudden takes a nosedive and you start wondering what's going on.
Thank you so much, Titi. Before I throw it back to Afyon, this really speaks to some of the things that we even tend to see with some persons with disabilities. You try to figure out why this person is so depressed, even as an adult. And I'm beginning to think that this is really linked to a lot of childhood trauma. There's a young lady who attention was brought to us. She's not young, she's a young lady with disability. And from what she's experiencing, a lot of the trauma, she's showcasing a lot of depression, and it's coming from damaged relationship with her primary caregiver, who is her mother. So they are in a very abusive verbally and almost physical abusive relationship, all because of disability, where the mother blames her for the disability, blames her for a marriage issue, blames her for so many things, and she in turn blames the mother for. So there's this very toxic environment. So currently, what's reaching us, or I mean, just as early as last week, was that she's more secluded. She doesn't talk to people again. She doesn't even go to church anymore. So it wasn't a church member that was like not seeing in church because she's supposed to be in choir and all that. So I'm beginning to see how strong this if it's not dealt with, could really impact on a person as an adult.
Definitely. And one of the things you just mentioned that I didn't mention is also the issue of the social issue of stigma that comes with certain disability. So, for example, if somebody, like you said, the mom blames her for the loss of the marriage. If the child was born with a certain disability, the child acquires disability. You find out there's certain culturally, religiously, depending on where you come from and what religion you practice. You find sometimes the children are blamed. We see there's a certain church, I forget the name now, and I don't know whether I'll be allowed to mention it, even if I can remember your program.
Don't mention
it. So, but it's in the, I think it's in the south of Nigeria. The woman would tell babies, the parents, that babies were born and are ill, are going through certain illnesses as children. The babies are witches. The issue of stigma and culture. So this woman would tell the parents that these babies were witches, wizards, and then the parents would stab the children to death, chain them up, lock them up, they would, and it's because the children were sent by the devil during the parents financially. Now you can imagine if a child brought up here, in that kind of environment, psychologically kind of damage that will be done to that child. That child will grow up without any level of self-esteem, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of guilt about their position in life. Yeah. And this definitely, can imagine going into adulthood, child will have a lot of issues. That kind of.
These things are happening and it is scary. Why I brought up this topic was because these are things that people don't even realize. They don't connect their adult experiences with what may have happened in the past. Like you said, many people don't even remember that those feelings are there. If things happen that trigger them, and then, these things come back. So, Osaki, I'll allow you to take the next question.
All right, thank you, Afyong. Today I must say you're doing well and we are learning still on adverse childhood experience, and you are speaking and we're all trying to learn in our gender space, ladies with disabilities. Now the question is, I know you've said some of the impact towards adulthood, but is there any specific manifestation when it comes to persons with disabilities? Is there any adverse childhood experience? Thank you.
Okay, so with people with disabilities, it's doubly complicated. It's doubly yes, it's doubly complicated because sometimes even for people who are as a therapist, clinical psychologist, whoever is seeing them, you're not sure where the issue stems from. So, yes, there's some people that will have issues with the fact that they have a certain disability, coping with it, and how to move forward in life with it. And they worry about just the basic things, especially when you live in Nigeria, because of things like mobility. Will I be able to get a job? Basic things like that should not be an issue. But we are here in our space, so they worry about such things. So is the depression stemming from that, or is the depression stemming from other issues surrounding how they grew up, what they were exposed to? Well, it's the work of clinical psychologists and therapists. They help tease it out. But yes, you would have a situation where that person feels also as if he or she has, it's a double whammy. I am going through life with a certain impairment or a certain disability that already disadvantages me as compared to everybody. But then I also have to go through the fact that I experienced maybe abuse, and not just sexual abuse, emotional abuse from home, because nobody could understand what I was going through. I had a family friend that had polio as a child, and she was in a wheelchair. And I remember that a lot of times she couldn't go to the school her siblings went to. When the siblings went to birthday parties, they couldn't take her to birthday parties. They wouldn't, not that they couldn't, but they wouldn't take her to birthday parties. And it took somebody to intervene and, sort of walk the mother through the fact that you're damaging this child. You're othering this child. You're making this child feel less than their siblings. If that person hadn't intervened, that child would have grown up, like I said earlier, with a lot of self-esteem issues, a lot of issues that would affect her as a child. I'm happy to say today she's married, she's married, she has kids today. But I can imagine if that person hadn't taken her mom by the hand and walked her through. And those are other issues we need to talk about the fact that as a society, we're not very really accepting. And that in itself creates a certain level of trauma for those people with disability.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, Osaki, thank you. You've actually brought up a very important issue. The issue of education and, advocacy. Most of these problems stem from ignorance. The dysfunction is passed down. This person was, treated this particular way. Most of our parents are also victims of adverse childhood experiences. And maybe because they didn't know any better and there was no help, so they have also passed down some of what they went through to the next generation. So it continues until somebody gets knowledge and is able to break that cycle. It becomes like a vicious cycle that goes on and on and on and on. So, and I'd like to actually.
Sorry, before you ask your question, I would throw in something that would probably help Titi with respect to working with persons with disabilities. So there's something that they call the intersectionality. Basically, what that simply means is that no matter what a person with disability presents with, the underlying denominator of disability must be considered. Like, how does that disability interact with what has been discovered? Because the truth of the matter is that a lot of persons with disabilities may not even know that disability may be an underlying notion that influences how they are responding, even in marriage, in sexual interactions and all that. So I would say that in your practice, when you speak or encounter persons with disabilities, that even though at the end maybe you determine sexual violence may have been the cause, that undertone, that interaction with disability is key to be able to address the issue. If not, it could be a recurring thing. So I said, let me throw that.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Frank. Yes, the issue of intersectionality is very important because the reality is, for us, especially in this part of the world, you're a woman. For the fact that you're a woman, you're already at a disadvantage. The fact that you have a disability, you're already at a disadvantage. And then when you now put the fact that you're a woman with a disability who now has a mental health issue, you just, you're opening up the field for so many issues. So it's very, very key, like you said.
Sorry, just not to hold the conversation. Interestingly, in the session I just finished, a woman from Uganda was sharing how she has a psychosocial disability, and then she had a child. So, of course, a lot of things happened. So it was now aggravated. She was now institutionalized, and then she was bothered about her child. So it was just complicated. The husband was trying to get her to get out of the institution. She was locked up. In fact, she had to escape to be able to get to her child. So you can imagine the many factors that came into play. And this was as a young lady. Now she's more advanced. She's been 35 years married. So that was after her first year of marriage as a young person. So she said it was so traumatic that her breast milk would be so full. She's begging them to allow, as far as they're concerned, they were seeing somebody who was crazy. And she's like, let me go and handle my child. They were not interested in that one. They were like, that one is your own. Let's make you well. Let's make you well. So, this brings her up really strongly. So let me turn back to that film.
Yes,
All right.
yes. We'll have to address certain, facets of society because it is very necessary. There's a lot of ignorance. There's a lot of misinformation about mental health and, all that is associated with it. So a lot of people are misinformed. And so that often influences their reaction and, the actions they take. And it's even worse when it starts from the family, because that is the foundational unit. So, but before we go to that, I'd like to ask, if a person is able to now identify or, come to the realization that, something that happened to me years ago may be responsible for what I'm going through now, what are the solutions that are available out there for, persons with and without disability to, help them cope with the trauma and possibly heal from it so that they can move on?
Okay, so thank you for that question. So I have background in clinical psychology. So people, when I go to first, people always say, you're even in the hospital. But I always tell people, once you recognize there's an issue, the reality is get counseling, get therapy. That's a simple thing. Get counseling, get therapy. And I always tell people to get counseling outside their religious organization, not counseling that is affiliated to your religion, from some cleric, religious cleric. And the reason I say this is not because I'm anti-religious. It's because the tenets of your religion will determine how they counsel you. Now, and that's very good because it shapes how you move forward with your life. But there's certain things that, because of religion, they're not going to openly discuss with you. So, for example, how would you discuss, I freeze when my husband touches me sexually with some of your clerics? It might be a very difficult thing to discuss, because your cleric is not going to tell you that. He's not going to say, is it the position? Is it the positioning? Is it how he's touching you? Is it, ask you questions that would help. They'll just say, okay, let's talk about this to God. And it's very important, and pray about it. But there's certain basic things. Is it the way he's touching you that reminds you of maybe some trauma you had? And if it's that, can you sit down and talk to him about other ways in which he can touch you? So that these are very key. So I ask people that do get counseling, do get therapy, but it's important to get it from professionals, people who are trained, people who are certified to do the job, not from, because there are lots of quacks around it in the country. Get it for people who are certified to do the job and can provide the necessary support for you.
Okay. No, thank you very much. I know you belong to an organization, so that people out there who may be interested in reaching out can, reach out to your organization where they need help. So
our organization is called, like I said, I work in a teaching hospital in Lagos, but I also work with an NGO called SERPIN, Suicide Research and Prevention Initiative. We actually work around suicide mostly. And we have a hotline where people can call. And when people call the hotline, we make referrals. We're in 35 out of the 36 states and the FCT. So we have mental health professionals in each state that we can make a referral to that, please. Because one of the things we realize that people sometimes when they realize they don't know how to reach out to a mental health professional, they don't know who to turn to. So you can call us. We'll help you make up create an appointment, set up an appointment. You can speak with the individual. I will read out the number to you. We have a toll-free number. I'm very sorry, but I'll read it out to you before we're done. All right.
So while you're doing that, I'd just like my co-host to give their final remarks about, our topic. We need to speak to a particular, facet of society, family, caregivers, government, CSO, civil society organizations, those who are in a position to do something, the health sector. Osaki, let's start with you.
I would like to speak to families and friends. What I would say is, let's try and get educated, because I know when I had polio as an infant, my parents didn't know about it. So it was so new that even everybody around was like, what's this? So they've seen people like that, but they've never had it so close to them. So it was a new thing that happened. But the funny part is that they didn't get the maybe opportunity, or they didn't see that they have to learn, educate themselves, and what next can we do with this child? How can we bring out the best of this child? So I think I need parents and family friends to do that. Educating yourself on certain situations around a child that's around you or within you. It's very, very necessary so that the child does not go through adverse childhood experience. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Education is key. Get information. Thank God today we have the internet. Go and Google. Just type in what you can, or ask talk to someone. You can get help to help you do better. Frankie.
Okay, so I want to speak to another group of persons that have an immediate influence on the development stages of a child, and that would be those in the school education system. So I've seen where families are very supportive, and then a child gets to school and the child is abused verbally, the child begins to experience weird things that the child will not experience on the home front. So I'm going to say to educators, whether in the public schools or private schools, some kind of sensitization training or something has to be done for teachers. There was a young child in the neighborhood where the parents, obviously she had a psychosocial disability, and she went to school and the teacher was calling her a witch. So this was not coming from the parents, it was coming from a teacher that does not have sense. So educators, yes, it was no sense. So and the parents did not know, because what was manifesting was when they want to get the child to school, the child will say, I'm not going. And if to them was like, why don't you want to go to school with your brothers and sisters? And at the end of the day, they now found out that actually what was happening was she had a teacher that was abusing her. She has a tics or whatever, the teacher would just go all out and now made her to be bullied by other children. So educators have to get some level of sensitization training, more awareness on children with disabilities, especially as we are moving towards the era of pushing for inclusive education, understanding that segregated education may not necessarily be the best in the long run for every child. So let me mention that. Thanks.
Very key, because more often than not, whether we like to admit it or not, many parents, outsource their parenting to teachers because children spend more time in school, and parents don't bother to even find out sometimes. Come back, they don't bother to find out what is happening in that space. So by the time they realize that the child is undergoing trauma, too late. And I'd also like to advise more parents with children who have one form of disability or the other, that they should consider mainstream education more than saying, special needs, unless that child's disability is such that they actually need a different environment where they can be taught. But if a child's disability is not intellectual, it is not an intellectual disability, I think it would be best if that child is, included in the mainstream education, because it would help them with their interactions and help them to build their self-esteem, especially if the environment is secure for them. All right, Titi, what would you like to say your final remarks?
Thank you very much. So before I, maybe I should mention our phone number last. You all said key things, and I think I would like to just quickly touch on a few of them. And the links, you talked about psychosocial disorders. Psychosocial disorders are invisible disorders. If you have a mobility issues, people see it. If you have a visual impairment or hearing, people see it. But when you have some certain psychosocial disabilities, and people can't see that disability, they don't understand why they have to why you say you are, maybe you need inclusive education, or you need certain things that would help you aid you. So I think it's very important that we should push about psychosocial we shouldn't push aside psychosocial disabilities. And this also leads us to the importance of educating people, educating our loved ones first and foremost, because a lot of parents, like you said, because of stigma, they hide the children, or even if they are doing well with the children at home, the parents are providing the adequate support, the parents are not educating their own immediate family members. Have you told, parents, for example, will be reluctant. The mother might be saying, oh, I don't want to drop my child with my sister. She might not know how to care for the child. But that's how you increase the issue of stigma and ignorance. But if you're able to say, oh, my aunt, I could drop my child with my neighbor, these are her needs, these are his needs, you are slowly educating other members, and that person's ignorance drops, and it becomes a little aware and can inform the other person. So educating our loved ones, taking opportunity to do what you ladies are doing, and I have to give you your commendation for doing this, because it's very important, educating people out there in the community. We never know who will stumble across the channel, who will come across it accidentally and stay glued up to it because of the information you're providing. And you don't know how many people that they're going through difficult things because they have a child with disability, they grew up with disability, will stumble across your channel and sit down and think, I needed this when I was growing up, or I needed this, where were this women when I was going through my struggles of raising my child? Because parents are so important. And I'll give you an example. There's a child that I know who's nonverbal. The father, even though she was nonverbal, everybody thought because she was nonverbal, that means she didn't know anything. That she had some sort of intellectual deficit. But the father was like, I know she doesn't have intellectual deficit, but I can see that, when I talk to her, she understands what I'm saying. She can't speak. And it's just that she can't speak and she has mobility issues. So what the father did was he bought her a laptop. And she was typing away. Anytime she wanted to communicate, she would type away. And, went to regular school, inclusion that we talked about. She didn't go to a school for children with special needs. She was top 3 in her class, primary school. I think she topped her school in secondary school. So the reality is, if her father hadn't given that support, that child would not have been educated and would have been left, wallowing in maybe a depressed mood or something where she can't even express what she's going through. So the importance of educating those around us as parents, as caregivers, is very important. And then finally, for the government, the reality is we can't do it on our own. The government has certain things they need to do. Nigeria is a country that we have a lot of laws. Lagos State, for example, I'm in Lagos State. Lagos State has a policy about mobility. All our buildings should have ramps. It was supposed to have been done by 2019, 2020. This is 2023. We don't have ramps.
We're all in the same boat, even here. And we will still do project and push it. No worry. But one day they will hear us. One day.
It's very important. I'm telling you. So for me, it's the government has a role. If government puts a ramp in all their buildings, you will soon see how all the public sector will immediately put ramps in their buildings. So the government has to lead in some of these things. Government has to set policies about inclusion, has to set policies, not just set it, and not just, because like I said, we have these laws, we don't implement. We need to implement some of these laws. And you need to put the right pegs in the right holes. I mean, how do they say that thing? Don't put somebody who doesn't have training in disability, doesn't understand disability issues, to come and head somewhere for people with disability, and then the person's making policies that just don't make pardon my friend, that just don't make any sense.
All right.
On the final note, let me read out our number. It's a toll-free number. Organization called SURPIN, SURPIN. If you're looking for us on Instagram, we're SURPINNG, Nigeria, SURPIN Nigeria. We're also SURPIN NG on Twitter. So you can, X now, and you can send us messages there, would respond. But our website is surpinng.com, www.surpinng.com. The full meaning of SURPIN is Suicide Research and Prevention Initiative. We have a toll-free hotline. The hotline is 08000 787746. I'll take that again, 08000 787746.
Titi, thank you so much. It's been amazing having you with us, and we have really learned a lot. We'd like you to drop your comments, share these videos far and wide. The information is too valuable to be kept in one place. And we'd also we solicit for your support in terms of finances. We need money right now. We need money to subscribe to Zoom, maintain our subscription so we can keep coming your way like this. If you want to come on the program, please indicate, and we will invite you to come in and share your, opinions with us. All right. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Until we come your way next week, Saturday, same time, 10:30 a.m. in the morning. Ladies, unmute your mics and let's just say our byes.
Bye.
Bye.
No find trouble.
Bye.
This is Bold TV.